That's really what a church is. That's what it should be. It should be alive, because as long as the Spirit of God is here, there is life. Now, it's kind of funny that will, in a sense, mirror personal lives. In our personal lives, we have good times, we have bad times, we have happy times, sad times. You know what? The church is just like that. She just read there, this church is, financial difficulties and sometimes attendance isn't what it ought to be. And there is an ebb and flow to a church, just like a life. Now, basically just reflect on some of the things that I believe have happened in this church. But in saying that, what we need to realize is that not all churches are alive. Okay? That the church in America is under attack like it's never been before. And some of those churches are falling prey to the devil. Okay? Now, at the moment, that church, and we say, well, now wait a minute, it's a church. You can't take Jesus out of the church. Really? Of course you can. No longer lifted up. If he's not the reason that you're here, then that church is no longer alive. Because where the presence of Jesus is, the Spirit is there, and there is life in the church. Now, if you look at the church today, I just want to, all of these things kind of fit together, I think. But if there are thousands of churches that had church this morning, right? But that doesn't mean that God was there. I don't know if you realize it or not, but if you look back at the history of the church, the Spirit, God did not speak for 400 years. But you know what? They still had church in the temple. Every Sabbath. They still, they were still meeting. But the problem, I'm not even sure they even recognized that. But see, what happens is that if you take God in the church, two things, and historically, in that intertestamental period, the two things that developed, liberalism. The Pharisees were the legalists and the Sadducees were the liberals. Now, I want you to look at churches today, and I want you to think about some of the things that you see in churches today. And I tell you what, they're so legalistic that they shut the world out. How is the world going to hear about Jesus if you don't have anything to do with the world? And you just shut them out. But then on the other side of that, you have, in other words, we just kind of do whatever we want to do. This is what happens. It begins to dictate to the church rather than the church dictate to culture. And you see, that's exactly what we see today. Most of us are, we've been around a while, had a voice in culture. People grew up. They knew that it was wrong to steal. They knew that it was wrong to lie. They knew that it was wrong to grab a gun and go shoot your fellow students with salt and light. Culture had permeated, or the church had permeated culture. And so just the presence of the church in culture, just the presence of the church in culture influenced that culture to be liberal. And as they begun to listen to the world and we become worldly, then all of a sudden we don't have a voice anymore. church rather than spiritually correct. You know, all of a sudden, well, you know, it's not politically correct to talk about sin anymore. It's not politically correct to talk about hell anymore. But I want you to know, and if people don't understand that they are sinners, they'll never come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. And people need to know that if they die without Jesus, they'll spend eternity in a place called hell, in a place of torment. And so, it may not be politically correct, but sin and hell are still real. People reinterpret. You know, isn't it amazing how as culture moves and as culture becomes more depraved, all of a sudden the Bible doesn't really mean what the Bible used to mean, right?